Have you ever taken a walk in the woods, maybe stepped off the trail for a second, and just wondered if the forest is secretly communicating right beneath your feet? I know it sounds a bit like science fiction, but the actual biological reality going on down there is honestly even more fascinating than you might think.
So welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to distill all that awe-inspiring research, look at the complex cellular biology, and, importantly, dig into the rigorous scientific debates surrounding Earth's underground forest ecosystems.
Okay, let's dive right into this. You've probably heard the incredibly catchy phrase, the Wood Wide Web. It's this super popular colloquial nickname referencing the exact same analogous function served by our own World Wide Web, but, applied to forests. It's done a great job establishing this powerful cultural idea of a fully connected, highly communicative ecosystem. But today, we are looking past the buzzwords and diving straight into the hard science. To keep us on track, here's our quick agenda for today's explainer. We're going to map out the hidden forest internet, look closely at the biology of fungi and plant partnerships, explore how exactly they trade nutrients and warnings, tackle the current scientific debate around these theories, and finally discuss seedlings and global protection. Let's get started.
Section 1. The hidden forest internet and uncovering those underground connections.
So what exactly is this hidden internet? Well, biological science calls it a common mycorrhizal network, or CMN for short. Think of it as a massive underground grid created by these tiny thread-like fungal structures called hyphae. These hyphae physically join up with plant roots, effectively connecting two or more individual plants together. This entire groundbreaking concept was actually pioneered back in 1997 by forest ecologist Suzanne Simard out in the Canadian forests. And it fundamentally changed how we look at a grove of trees forever.
Moving on to Section 2. Fungi and plant partnerships, and the actual biology of this connection.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the cellular contrast. To truly understand the network, you have to look at how plants and fungi connect at that microscopic level. There are two main players here. In arbuscular mycorrhizal networks, the fungal hyphae literally penetrate right inside the plant cells themselves. It's incredibly intimate, and it's actually the most common type across land plants. Contrast that with ectomycorrhizal networks, where the hyphae just sort of thread their way around the plant cells without ever breaching the cell walls. And that type is super common in the dense tree canopies of northern hemisphere boreal and temperate forests.
Once they're physically hooked up, these networks facilitate this amazing forest economy governed by what's called the source-sink model. Basically, resources naturally flow from areas of higher concentration, that's your source, straight to areas of lower concentration, the sink. For example, researchers have literally watched carbon shift seasonally between completely different species. In the spring, carbon might flow toward a young sugar maple sapling that desperately needs energy to unfurl its leaves. But then, right in the fall, that flow actually reverses direction, moving over to trout lilies when they're busy developing their roots. It's this highly dynamic, perfectly timed exchange based entirely on who needs the resources the most.
Section 3. Trading nutrients and warnings, and how information travels underground.
So, what kind of biological cargo is actually traveling through these fungal pipelines? Obviously, you've got your vital nutrients, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the good stuff, but amazingly, it's also acting as a subterranean black market for allochemicals. These are toxic inhibitors, like juglone, which is produced by black walnut trees. Plants actually use the network to essentially poison their competing neighbors. It is a literal unfolding woodland drama down there. And beyond that, they're also transferring defensive volatile organic compounds, things like jasmonates and salicylic acid, to sound the alarm.
Let's actually look at this defensive communication in action, because it's wild. Picture this. A Douglas fir is actively being attacked by hungry budworms. In response to getting chewed on, the tree releases defensive infochemicals straight down into its roots and out into the fungal network. Almost like a tripwire, neighboring and completely uninfested ponderosa pines receive those chemical signals and rapidly begin priming their own defense enzymes. So the attacked tree is essentially warning a completely different tree species to put its shields up before the bugs even arrive.
Now you might be wondering, how do we actually know this invisible economy exists? Well, scientists use a rigorous tool called isotopic labeling. By introducing radioactive carbon-13 and carbon-14 into the system, researchers can quite literally follow a radioactive trail of carbon as it moves bidirectionally back and forth through the soil between species like Douglas firs and paper birches. It's incredibly solid, hard evidence proving that this underground transaction is very real and highly active.
Section 4. The Wood Wide Web debate. Let's look at the scientific limits and controversies.
Okay, now, good science relies entirely on questioning established theories, right? And the whole Wood Wide Web narrative definitely faces notable pushback from parts of the broader scientific community.
While nutrient transfer absolutely happens, critics point out it's actually really difficult to verify if carbon is traveling through direct, continuous physical fungal pipelines or if it's just leaching indirectly into the soil and being passively picked up by a neighbor. Regarding that amazing defensive signaling we just talked about, recent reviews highlight potential positive citation bias and overinterpreted results in the broader literature. And when assessing the overall ecosystem impact, well, isolated lab experiments easily show connection, but it's incredibly difficult to isolate and verify these complex interactions out in natural, chaotic forest environments. It is absolutely vital that we weigh these awe-inspiring theories against the very real, practical limitations of field verification.
Finally, Section 5, Seedlings and Global Protection, exploring the evolutionary impact and mapping our future.
So why does this underground network matter for the global evolutionary future of our forests? Basically because it gives highly vulnerable saplings a massive life-saving advantage. By tapping into an existing mature mycorrhizal network, these tiny seedlings aren't just starting from scratch. This connection directly leads to increased establishment success, much better access to shared water and nutrients, and significantly higher survivorship during secondary succession. They're basically plugging straight into a giant, established life support system.
And this brings us to a really incredible modern development on a global scale, the 2025 Underground Atlas. The Society for the Protection of Underground Networks, or SPUN, just successfully mapped global mycorrhizal biodiversity using over 2.8 billion fungal sequences spanning 130 different countries. We finally have a high-resolution global map of Earth's critical underground fungal communities. It is a huge milestone.
But as this brilliantly illustrates, with that mapping comes a pretty stark warning about the extreme vulnerability of these exact ecosystems. A staggering 90% of Earth's most diverse underground mycorrhizal fungal ecosystems currently remain completely unprotected. Only 10% fall within protected areas. Think about that. This lack of protection directly threatens our planet's carbon drawdown capabilities, future crop productivity, and just the overall resilience of our ecosystems to extreme climate events.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with a perspective-shifting question. If trees actively share an interconnected underground web of resources and chemical warnings, what truly constitutes a single organism in nature? Are we just looking at individual trees fiercely competing for sunlight, or are we actually standing on the back of a giant, interconnected woodland superorganism? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I really hope this deep dive has completely changed how you'll look at your next walk in the woods.